Vivekananda's Hinduism is what I would say is my Hinduism, and that's what I'm anchored in. That was from my teenage days, that's what I believed and read and practiced. 4 ways in which you can be a good Hindu. There is no place for saying, as some unfortunately claim in the name of Hinduism, they sort of reduce it to something like the team identity of the British football hooligan. And they say, you don't support my team, I'm going to hit you on the head. If you don't say Jai Shri Ram, I'm going to flog you. That's not Hinduism. It is exactly a way of being, a way of life, and a way of relating to the cosmos. And how you actually choose to manifest that way is not prescribed. There are multiple choices, multiple beliefs, multiple ways of worship, multiple deities you can imagine to focus your worship on. It's a religion that is all-encompassing, that does not claim to be the only true religion in the world, that accepts all other paths and all other forms of worship as valid, and that at the same time is full of questioning and incertitude. It in many ways is a religion for the thinking, doubting skeptic of the 21st century, because it invites you. I mean, even the Rig Veda's creation hymn, the Nasadiya Sutta, says, you know, where did this come from? Who created it all? What's this all about? Maybe he in the heaven knows, or maybe even he does not know. Can you imagine a religious precept that actually casts doubt on the omniscience of the Creator? But that's precisely what Hinduism does. Everything is open. We have no Hindu Vatican. We have no Hindu Pope. We have no Hindu Sunday. You can worship any of the 7 days of the week. You can dedicate that day to any of your deities. We have no compulsory obligations or rituals. We have so many sacred texts that 1,000 years ago, Adi Shankara had to confine himself to a limited number to give his interpretation of the faith when he was trying to revive Hinduism. So who am I to sit here and try and give you a one-sentence definition? It is all of this, and it is not something else. It is in many ways, I've made the slightly provocative argument at the end of my book that in many ways it's a perfect faith for the 21st century, because in this networked world, it's kind of an open source faith. It takes ideas from everywhere. That in this world in which there's a resistance to absolute hierarchies, there are no absolute hierarchies in Hinduism. In a world in which there is skepticism, there is doubt, there's even talk of post-truth. Hinduism is a religion that acknowledges that the greatest truth is the admission of the existence of other truths. So all of this, I mean, I have very, very sort of little doubt that mine is itself a partial explanation, and that for the explanation I give, others can give another one. But mine is based on a very wide and rather detailed reading of spiritual texts over a long period of time that I've tried to distill into this understanding. But it's very close to the way in which Hinduism was taught and preached 1,000 years ago by Adi Shankara. Then, of course, various revival and reformist movements came. Then Swami Vivekananda gave it the modern coloring in the last decade of the 19th century. And Swami Vivekananda's Hinduism is what I would say is my Hinduism, and that's what I'm anchored in. That was from my teenage days, that's what I believed and read and practiced. And I don't believe that that Hinduism is often properly understood by those who claim to be speaking in its name. And that becomes a particular challenge, but that I know is not what this is about today.
But then where is the sort of religion in this? It sounds to me like you're making the case for something that's very, like there's skepticism at its heart, and there's pluralism and liberalism as well. Yes? So we're seeing pluralism, liberalism, and skepticism as the cornerstones of what you're defining, and you're saying it's very 21st century, it's open source. But then where is God? Where is spirituality? And I suppose I see you very much as promoting this idea, like Vivekananda, of the kind of Upanishad-based Hinduism, which is quite abstract, intellectual, all about Brahman, versus the kind of Puranic idea, which is much more about the stories and the folk tales and the kind of lived, embodied way in which people worship and actually sort of seem to think about deities. And
so they're both there, but it's also partly a question of the way the faith evolved. See, the original Hindu concept, you go right back to the ancient times, to the Rig Veda. The ancient concept of God in Hinduism was actually very similar, this is going to shock you, to the Islamic concept of God today. There is a God without shape, without qualities, without gender, without sound, without some God you cannot see or imagine, the Nirguna Brahman. This God, this spark, this idea that permeated the entire cosmos. But then, after a few centuries, the rishis began to realize this wasn't enough for ordinary people. They were going around worshipping trees and rivers and mountains. So they said, no, people need something to focus their worship on. So let's think of the Saguna Brahman. The Saguna Brahman is the God with qualities, with the way in which you can imagine this great deity. And when that idea of the Saguna Brahman came about, they also accompanied it with the same Rigvedic skepticism. They said, no one knows what authoritative image there is. I mean, you can't say God is this guy with a white beard towering above you in the clouds. There's no guarantee. It might not even be a male, right? So you are free to imagine God as you wish, because the imagination is itself an admission of our unknowing. It is for us a crutch on which to focus our worship of the absolute, of the divine, of whatever you want to call it, of the Brahman. And therefore, if you want to imagine God as a 10-armed woman riding a tiger, that's fine. You want to imagine God as a pot-bellied man with an elephant head writing on a tablet with a mouse by his side, that's fine too. But by the same logic, my friends, if you want to imagine God as a bleeding man suffering on a cross, that is fine too to the true Hindu. And that is something that people have to understand. Swami Vivekananda would say this. He said that which some call as Allah, some call as Jehovah, some call as Jesus, some call as Shiva or Vishnu, that's all the same thing. He used to quote the Shiva Mahimna Stotram, which says that just as many rivers flow, some straight, some winding, some downhill, some through valleys, and end up in the same sea, so also all forms and ways of worship end up at the same divine. So that is the reason why we have these different views. And don't forget, this is the oldest continuously practiced faith in human existence. It goes back 3,500 years. So inevitably it's evolved over time. Nothing stays static. There have been various ideas, various debates, various philosophies, various schools of philosophy. Within it, there have been various distinctions. There have been those who argued that God doesn't exist, that all that matters is the material world, the Charvaka philosophy. There are those who argued that you should renounce the material world, that it's all illusion, all that matters is the divine. All of this is permissible in Hinduism. You have to read and pick and choose. There are four forms, as Vivekananda brilliantly summarized it. The four ways in which you can be a good Hindu, right? So there's Jnana Yoga, which is through reading and knowledge. You find out about these spiritual ideas, as I've tried to do. There's Bhakti Yoga, which is what most people do. That is, they go and worship. You go to a temple, have a puja room at home, pray. That's Bhakti Yoga. Then there is Raja Yoga, which is interiority, meditation, looking for the truth within yourself. And that takes a fairly evolved person to be able to do that, and some do. And finally, don't forget, Mahatma Gandhi was a great practitioner of this. There's Karma Yoga, which is to actually worship God through serving humanity, through serving your fellow man and woman. Why did the Ramakrishna mission get set up? The whole idea was, rather than just going around preaching religion, let's go out and serve people. Let's educate them. Let's teach them science and mathematics. Let's actually give them some spiritual ideas and moral values, but along with practical tools for living. That's Karma Yoga. And all these four are equally valid, my dear Pallavi. So if you want, you can be a Jnana Yogi. If you want, you can be a Bhakti, complete total worshipper of particular your favorite deities. But you can also go off and be a Karma Yogi and go off and serve humanity and say, that's my worship of God. And the Hindu will embrace all of this and accept all of this. But in all of this, there is no place, I'm quoting Vivekananda again, he said, the Hindu will never light the fires of Inquisition. There is no place for saying, mine is the only way. There is no place for saying, as some unfortunately claim in the name of Hinduism, they sort of reduce it to something like the team identity of the British football hooligan. And they say, you don't support my team, I'm going to hit you on the head. If you don't say Jai Shri Ram, I'm going to flog you. That's not Hinduism. That has nothing to do with Hindu Dharma.